Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sharon Bonney. I'm the CEO for the Coalition on the Adult Basic Education, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our webinar today, From IBEST to Early IBEST, Designing IETs that Start Students on Career Pathways at Earlier Levels. This webinar is generously sponsored by Burlington English, and we have with us our friend Robert Breitbard. And I just want to give a shout out to Burlington English because they've really been a friend and a partner with us since the start of these webinars. We started these back in 2017 when about 73 people that were on the first webinar, and Burlington English was the sponsor for that webinar. So we thank you now, as we have over 900 that have registered for this webinar, and this program has grown exponentially, and we've had Burlington English's support all along the way. So thank you so much, Robert. I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. And as the kids say, back at you. If it hadn't been for the phenomenal vision of you, the COA board, to come up with the entire concept of these webinars, who knew so many years ago you were probably building to this time when we're most in need. And to all of you joining us, again, hope this is meeting you, this view right now, and you're safe and you're healthy. And thanks for doing everything you're doing to not just bringing adult education continuing to your learners, but also being part of their normal. And they love you so much. And it's so great that you're taking these steps. And with the topic that we have today, going above and beyond even just the basics. And with that, for more than 2 decades, I was an adult education instructor and director down here in Florida. Now working with you all across the country for now 7 years with Burlington English. So it's a real honor to sponsor these. And for today's topic, it couldn't be any more apropos for what we do in Burlington English. If you're not familiar with Burlington English or haven't seen us in a while, 100% web-based, all devices, and obviously what a time that's needed right now, so that everything your teachers would need, and you as a teacher from home, as far as your learners accessing us, from everything from the tablet to Chromebook to their smartphone, 100%. So that's a perfect timing for now. I think for the biggest thing as a former adult education instructor is we provide your adult education instructors with everything, and I do mean everything they need to conduct super highly successful lessons that are great, engaged, standards-based, and WIOA focused. And speaking of WIOA focused, for everything that this great webinar is going to show us today, just know that we have elements of Burlington English, particularly not just our brand new Burlington core, but also our career exploration and soft skills that gives you the ability to have a virtual career counselor so that you can be building for this preparation for IET, IELC, this early, IBEST, if you will, and you can have students exploring everything so that they make great choices, that they narrow down from the 16 Department of Labor career clusters, they narrow down to the career that's right for them. And then for that successful transition into a training program, they understand that the learning doesn't stop and that their options, such as career laddering, doesn't stop. So I know I'm super excited to hear Wendy and Lori and everyone participating today. Thank you once more. For more information, please check out our website, burlingtonenglish.com. And again, really super happy to be with you today. Be safe. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you so much, Robert. We appreciate that. And we really appreciate all of that Burlington English has been doing to provide for our field so that we're able to kind of bring our field from that horse and buggy day to the space age, right? So quickly. And so thank you, Burlington English, for all that you've been doing behind the scenes, helping us along the way with that. So I'm going to share a few slides here, if my computer will work with me. Yeah, 1 second. Hopefully you all can see this. Okay, so I just have 2 quick slides that I want to go over. One is, as you probably are aware, we have Advocacy April going on right now. And why is that so important? Because our legislators need to hear from you. As this COVID crisis continues, and so many of our programs are operating from their homes, and many of our adult learners don't have the Wi-Fi access or the laptops that they need, this really is our time to reach out to legislators and let them know what we're dealing with and the pain that we're dealing with and trying to ramp up and get our classrooms online. So if you go to www.coab.org, you'll see that there's a really easy way to reach out to the legislators over email, and also some some tips on how you can connect with legislators and set up virtual meetings with them. We've had a number of states that have done this, a number of individuals who've done this as well, and it's been really successful in helping us to obtain the funding that we need as a field. So I want to encourage you to do that. Also, you know, we've been really trying to provide webinars that would be useful to you as members. And so we have a number of additional COVID-19 resource webinars that are coming up. I want to encourage you to go to our website and check those out. For example, we have a Google Classroom webinar that's coming up. We have an online instruction webinar that's coming up. So just encourage you to go there and check that out at www.coabe.org. And then I also just have a few housekeeping items to mention to you. Everybody that attends this webinar will receive a certificate of completion, which will come to you within 24 hours directly from Zoom. Also, this webinar is being recorded and it will be saved into our archives on our Adult Educator repository. So yes, the slides, the YouTube version of the webinar, all of that will be available to you in our Adult Educator repository. Okay, great. So with those few things, now I would like to introduce you to our presenters. We have Wendy Shader-Black and Lori Kirsta-Joseph. I'm going to read their bios. I'm going to actually stop my video here while I read these to you. Wendy Shader-Black is the College and Career Transitions Manager for the Adult Education Division at Pima Community College. Since 2013, Wendy has been building partnerships across the college and community in order to support successful career pathways for adult learners. In this capacity, she's developed several IBEST, early IBEST, and bridge programs at Pima Community College. Throughout the past 2 decades, Wendy has been an adult educator, an educational program developer, a trainer, and an entrepreneur both here in the U.S. and abroad. Currently, she is focused on developing collaborative programs at Pima Community College to help students carve out a pathway for successfully transitioning into college or career. Wendy holds a master's in education and international development from University College of London. Lori Kirsta-Joseph is currently acting vice president of Pima Community College's Adult Basic Education for College and Career Division. Lori is a servant leader with 20 years of experience leading and directing all aspects of adult education, which includes student services, instruction, professional learning, curriculum development, testing and placement, IBEST and transition programming, grant administration, as well as collaborations and partnerships. Lori holds a master's in leadership for higher education and a bachelor's in linguistics. She's an innovative program leader who's recognized at the local, state, and national level for educational leadership in integrated education and training, IBEST models, and WIO partnerships. She also currently serves as representative for the 8 states in Region 7 and as Workforce Development Chair on the Coalition for Adult Basic Education's board. And I've had the real pleasure of working with Lori now for a couple years, and she's been dynamic on our board. So with that, I would like to turn this over to Wendy and Lori. And as they're pulling up their screens, if you all would just welcome them in the chat box and put any questions you might have in the Q&A.
Good morning, everybody. This is Lori. Saying hello to all of you from very sunny Tucson, Arizona. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Okay. Sharon, are you able to see that?
Yes, I can see that. Thank you.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, I want to thank, first of all, Sharon and COABE for the invitation to present this webinar today. It's based on a presentation that Wendy and I did at COABE at the conference in New Orleans in 2019 when our early IBEST programming was still very, very new. We're honored and excited to have been invited back today to present again via the webinar. And I want to thank Robert at Burlington English for sponsoring today's webinar. Finally, I want to thank all of you who are taking the time to participate today. We know that all of us in the field of adult education are busy responding to the current health crisis and working long hours to ensure that we can continue to support our learners. So we greatly appreciate all of you who are here for taking a bit of your day to be with us. With that, let's get started. From IBEST to early IBEST, designing IETs that start students on career pathways at earlier levels. We have 2 goals that frame all that we're going to be speaking about today. First, we will be sharing information about integrated education and training models, which will shorthand, of course, as IETs, that we have been designing to better serve adult learners with intermediate level skills. We'll walk through what each IET looks like and how they differ from one another. And we'll discuss our collaboration with workforce partners and how that collaboration fed the development, the implementation, and the success of our IET models. As we get started, just a little bit about our context. PCC is a large multi-campus community college in Tucson, Arizona, set in a county with roughly 1 million people living not far from the border with Mexico. Our adult education program is similarly large, serving more than 5,000 adult learners a year with adult basic education, English as a second language, refugee classes, citizenship preparation, and transition programs such as MathBridge and IBEST. Our program has a long history of working with our workforce partners, including the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA partners in our county and with our college's workforce division. This is another important part of our context. This graphic depicts how our adult ed program is a career pathways program. The left side is for those seeking a high school equivalency diploma, and the right for those who are learning English. ELAA, or ELA, stands for English Language Acquisition for Adults, which is what Arizona uses for ESL. All classes in our program are career contextualized. The focus of lower levels is career exploration and general workforce preparation skills. And then at higher levels, classes are contextualized to one of 3 career sectors that have strong local employability: health, business and IT, and applied technology. You'll notice that the highest level courses are IETs in the IBEST model. It's important to note that the number of students who come to us in our program with skills at these highest levels, at those sort of 9th grade and above levels, is usually just around 10%, and that the bulk of our learners come in with the 5th to 7th grade skill levels. The scaffolding in this pathway allows learners to enter at any level along the pathway, begin their career exploration and workforce preparation as soon as they enter, and then progress up through the levels as their skills increase, with IBEST and other transition programming facilitating the transition to post-secondary education. Also, as part of the context and frame for today, just a bit of a reminder that WIOA set forth the expectation of developing and implementing integrated education and training models, or IETs, and that all IETs must include these 3 components: adult education and literacy, which includes the reading, writing, and math and English skills; workforce preparation, including critical thinking skills, digital literacy, self-management skills, as well as competencies in utilizing resources and understanding systems and working with others. And then importantly, workforce training, which we will also refer to here as career and technical ed, or CTE. So here's what IETs have looked like at Pima Community College. We've been doing IETs at Pima since 2014. We developed our first IET programs based on the Washington State model called Integrated Basic Education and Skills Training, or IBEST. And so the IBEST name has stuck. Our IBEST model, the IBEST model in general, helps adult learners to develop their basic skills concurrently and in the context of career training. Since that career training is offered at the post-secondary level, and because students must also achieve the GED in the year-long program, the NRS level for students entering our IBEST programs need to be around NRS level 5, or roughly 8th grade skills or higher. We've had to learn over time how to design and build these IBEST models, what works best for students and for the partnership. So we've built very strong relationships around the college and with our one-stop and WIOA partners to ensure the wraparound supports that students need. This has included leveraging WIOA Title I dollars, as well as federal financial aid for GED seekers using the ability to benefit provision. We've had great success with this model. 11 cohorts of students have participated in an IBEST program at PCC. Certificate completion rates and GED completion rates are high, typically around 80%. To meet the expectations laid out in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, we knew that the partnerships with our workforce system partners would be essential. As mentioned earlier, we've been partnering with our County One Stop, or Arizona at Work team for decades. WIOA, however, helped with the alignment of our performance measures, and with the clear expectation that all WIOA required partners work closely together to co-enroll and to collaborate in serving adult learners, especially those with the most barriers to employment. This slide demonstrates the partners that are at the table when we develop and implement IBEST. IBEST engages the core WIOA partners and more. ABE, in the circle at the top, is provided by us in Adult Ed at Pima Community College. We are a WIOA Title II program. And then we work closely with our one-stop system partners, the Titles 1, 3, and 4 partners at our Pima County One Stop, Arizona at Work. The Career and Technical Ed, or CTE, is typically provided through our community college. And finally, our CTE and one-stop partners support us in engaging directly with local industry. We do IBEST because it is the exemplification of how this system comes together to serve students under WIOA, and because it leads to student success. So we're seeing great success with our post-secondary level IBEST models. But as I noted earlier, only about 10% of our students at any moment are at that high school level. The bulk of our learners have intermediate level skills. So we challenged ourselves to develop IET models that would be accessible to the bulk of our learners, to help learners get started on a career pathway and career training sooner. And that led to what we are now calling early IBEST. And so with that, I'm going to hand things over to my colleague Wendy to tell you more about our early IBEST programs.
Thanks, Laurie. I'm so glad to be here today to share some of what we've learned in developing these early IBEST programs. So over the last 2 years, we've developed 4 early IBEST programs inside of the health, business and IT, and applied technology sectors. We're going to be sharing an ongoing work in progress. We have great teams who are doing innovative and creative work to design these programs that can help students. We will be the first to tell you, though, that these are not perfect programs. We do want to encourage everyone, however, to reach and to develop these new kinds of models if you're not doing it already, because of how they help students make progress toward their educational and career goals. So the goal of our early IBEST programs is to get students started on a career pathway sooner. I think the next slide, we can switch to the next slide. Thank you. Early IBESTs are shorter duration. They're 9 to 20 weeks, unlike our IBEST programs, which typically last a full year. The courses are open to mid-level ABE and ELA students and are held at our adult ed learning centers rather than on the college campuses where the IBEST programs live. This allows the students to more easily access these classes and to continue studying within our program. Early IBESTs are taught by an adult education instructor, or they're co-taught with a technical content expert. All of the programs integrate career training, and students explore the next steps in their career pathways. Some involve external partners, such as Microsoft Philanthropies or the Caregiver Training Institute, and some are simply working with internal partners. They are each unique, with courses offered at different times and for different durations. They're co-taught or not co-taught, but all of these early IBEST involve 2 key elements. Number 1, it's essential to tap our broader networks to build healthy partnerships and collaborate. The partners and the roles we all play look different in each of these early IBESTs, but they're all invaluable for providing access to training and opportunity to our students. And number 2, all of these models require innovation. They require thinking outside the box in order to create unique programs that would fit within our contexts, our communities, and our student populations. So as we take a closer look at our 4 programs, I'll be focusing largely on these 2 essential aspects of the early IBEST model, the partnerships and the innovation. So starting with the early IBEST for caregiving, it's a 9-week integrated training model that's a partnership between the Caregiver Training Institute, or CGTI, HPOG Hopes, Adult Education, and One Stop. At the time we started this model, it was well known that many students in our program were interested in getting started on a health professions pathway, but that our college's certificate programs, such as LPN or medical assistant, were not yet accessible to our students at lower skill levels. So we had been exploring possible pathways for these students for some time, but had not yet been able to identify a good fit. One of our strongest partnerships at that time was with the HPOG HOPES grant, or the Health Pathways Opportunity Grant at our college. We had been working with HPOG for years in our successful behavioral health and medical assistant IBEST programs. The HPOG director had been meeting with an external caregiver training provider and approached us, hoping that we might be interested in developing an IBEST-like model for caregiving. The external training program was intensive. At 4 weeks long, Monday through Friday, students who completed the certificate program would then be prepared for the Arizona State certification exam and could most likely find employment immediately. Importantly, this caregiver training program was also on our local One Stop's ETPL, or eligible training provider list. This meant that One Stop could provide the funding and support to cover the cost of tuition, supplies, and other additional training that would be needed for students once they co-enrolled. So it had all the pieces we were looking for in an early IBEST: a short course, industry recognized training and a credential, eligibility for one-stop funding, accessible to students at a lower skill level, in demand, and a first step onto a career pathway in healthcare. So we pulled together the team of HPOG, One Stop, the caregiver training provider. In this model, it's CGTI, the Caregiver Training Institute, and Adult Ed to collaborate on the development of this program. So designing an integrated program with an external partner required some out-of-the-box thinking. The external training provider offered a 4-week intensive training program, like I said, but with a comprehensive, highly structured curriculum that did not really allow room for co-teaching or for any additional instructional time for basic skills development during the training time. However, CGTI also recognized the real need for significant basic skills development and employment readiness for many or most of their students. So there was definitely buy-in from our partners to come up with this kind of model that could integrate basic skills and this technical training. The resulting program was a new model that would wrap the highly contextualized basic skills and employment readiness instruction around the technical content. We designed a program that was 9 weeks in total, 4 weeks of contextualized adult education informed by the CGTI instructor, 4 weeks of caregiver training supported by the adult ed instructor, and 1 week of adult education employment readiness taught by the adult ed instructor and informed by HPOG and One Stop. As a result of this new program design, students felt far more prepared for the rigor and fast pace of their 4-week intensive training. And after the training, they valued the additional week to develop their resume, practice interviewing, and prepare for the job fair we held at the end, and employment as a caregiver post-class. So since that first cohort, the model has continued to evolve. This year, in response to industry demands for faster training of much-needed caregivers, our partner shrunk the training time down to 2.5 weeks, but kept the same amount of content and expected outcomes. So we lengthened the adult education instruction and kept the total length of the course at 9 weeks. We did this to ensure sufficient support for the learners to succeed in the shortened career training. The early IBEST for caregiving is a lot like an IBEST in that students participate in a career training program, they have 2 teachers, and they're prepared for employment at the end. But while it pulls from the IBEST model, it's an early IBEST because it's shorter, it's accessible to students at lower skill levels, and it's an earlier entry point onto a career pathway. And while this program uses a 2-teacher model, most of the collaboration between the teachers happens behind the scenes, informing the contextualized curriculum and providing individual students the one-on-one support they need, rather than straight up co-teaching in the classroom. Co-teaching is one very effective approach to collaborative instruction, but not the only one. So overall, students valued the training and the credential. They also valued the contextualized and integrated instruction and recognized how much it helped them succeed in the technical training. So like the early IBEST for caregiving, the early IBEST for computer science also involved training with an external partner and also came to us through an already established partnership. Also like caregiving, we had to design a program around a training curriculum that required strict adherence to a planned delivery and timeline, which pushed us to innovate once again. So whereas HPOG brought the caregiving opportunity to our program, With this early IBEST, it was one stop that linked us with this opportunity. Microsoft Philanthropies had developed a computer science curriculum for high schools called TEALS, Technology, Education, and Literacy in Schools. TEALS connects high school teachers with industry volunteers to build computer science programs in the schools that increase student interest in computer science and build teacher capacity. Students in the TEALS Introduction to Computer Science course learn to code using Snap and Python, one of the most commonly used coding languages globally. TEALS had been operating in Tucson for a little while, already partnering with some high schools and with One Stop. Because of our well-established collaboration with One Stop and our IBEST programs, our One Stop liaison recognized that TEALS could be a great fit for adult education. We believed that computer science would be of interest and accessible for a broad mix of students of all skill levels, both ELA and ABE. At that time, there were no other adult education programs in the nation who were partnering with TEALS, so ours was the first. Again, we had to think creatively on program design. How would we take a set curriculum and instructional model that was aligned to a typical high school schedule and context and adapt it into our own? So in our integrated model, we built a schedule where the volunteer instructors would come to our learning center every day from 8 to 9 a.m. before the students' regular reading, writing, math, and ELA classes began. So students could come early for TEALS and then just continue on into their regular classes. We also added an additional time 1 day a week for career exploration, field trips, and class visits. The first year, everything was brand new. We learned a couple of important lessons that led to some significant changes in year 2. First, our partners struggled to find industry volunteers who could commit to the schedule, so we were working almost entirely with 4 different University of Arizona student volunteers for this face-to-face instruction. And the schedule was really hard for them to sustain. So they were also really new to teaching and needed some guidance. So it offered some challenges in that face-to-face model. We also learned in the first year that Snap, a visual tool designed to introduce coding to kids, was not a good fit, and it was not particularly relevant for our adult learners. So we made some significant changes in year 2. First, we changed our instructional delivery to remote instruction in order to ensure we could work with an experienced industry professional. We invested in new technology to support the TEALS model. We provided headsets with microphones, a more robust camera for the classroom, and installed new software. The result has been outstanding. Students are physically in the computer lab classroom, but they're sharing in the synchronous virtual instruction with the remote industry volunteer dialing in from Seattle. This hybrid approach allows our students to engage in multiple modalities of learning. They are both in a remote classroom and in a physical shared space at the same time. They help each other. They have access to one-on-one support with the remote instructor when needed. And if they can't get to our classroom on any given day, they can still stay home, but not miss class. It has really evolved to be a model that is the best of both worlds. Second, we worked with our partners to adjust the curriculum. And as our goal with adult learners is to connect them to training which can be applied in the real world, in our second year of TEALS, we wanted to make sure our partners agreed to make an exception to the standard curriculum and let go of Snap from the curriculum, teaching only Python. So these changes have dramatically improved this early IBEST. And in our coming year, we are planning to bring on a new teacher, so a second teacher from adult education, and open a second early IBEST at another location as well. In line with TEALS's model for increasing teacher capacity in schools, our veteran teacher will now be able to train the new teacher coming on board. So it's really important to point out here that completing a Microsoft Introduction to Computer Science curriculum and gaining some skills to code in Python are not industry recognized credentials. They are, however, industry recognized training. These skills, and certainly the provider, Microsoft, are valued in the IT sector, and the students know it. So although our ideal target with any IET program is to provide industry recognized credentials, they're not always available or accessible in every sector for our learners. However, we often can provide access to this kind of industry recognized training. training that employers and students both value, and which can provide a pathway to a better career. So this is a really great example of industry recognized training. Finally, this early IBEST also saw one further opportunity. The Center for the Future of Arizona, a state initiative aimed at strengthening Arizona's workforce through building pathways through education and training, heard about our program through a mutual partner and reached out to us to collaborate on providing 2 summer internships. So 2 of our students were placed in internships for the summer inside of our own college's IT department, leading to one of them getting hired into a full-time position as an IT specialist. This summer, depending on the situation with COVID-19, we are looking to double the investment to 4 internships. And I wanted to share that piece because it's such a great example of how a strong network of partners and an innovative program model can lead directly to opportunities for our students. And in this case, it was a win for our college as well. So I'd like to pause for a moment and check in with Lori. She's been monitoring the Q&A for the last handful of minutes, and we wondered if we could address any of those questions right now before we continue on.
Sure. Hey everybody, Wendy, I'm going to read a couple of questions I'm seeing from the chat and from the Q&A. I encourage folks as you're listening, go ahead and keep putting questions in that Q&A and we'll do our best to get to all of them. We are going to take 3 or 4, maybe 5 minutes right now to answer a couple specifically about this first section. A really important question, maybe Wendy, I'll answer this one and then I'm going to throw some your way. Oh, and I said I would start video so that you could see us while we answer questions. All right. Hi, everybody. So a really important question somebody asked is, what is the difference between IBEST and IET models, which creates or requires co-teaching? And here's how we think of it, is that IBEST is one type of IET model, and really IBEST and early IBEST are 2 kind of variations on a theme. They're all IETs. It's just that IBEST is the branding that we launched with because of what we learned from Washington State, and it became what our partners knew and understood and what students knew and understood. So we have stuck with IBEST as our language when we're advertising what we do, but they all fit under the IET umbrella. We, depending on the model, with our IBEST at the post-secondary level, we require co-teaching and collaborative development of curriculum. With our early IBESTs, we more rarely do co-teaching. So it just kind of depends on the model and how we can work that. So that's an important clarification. Wendy, there are a couple questions specifically about the 2 early IBESTs you shared. First, what levels? There's several folks who asked maybe what TABE level or CASAS level do folks need to be at to get into caregiving or into the computer science?
You know, what's great about both of those particular programs is that they really do serve students who are in a hearty kind of mid-level range. For ABE students, I think we see typically a level 4 or 5, and we pull students from the middle range in our particular program levels. They're both also really accessible to ELA students, to our English language learners. Typically and yeah, they do both participate in those same classes together. And both of those have significant number of students that are from ELA classes. I think that for both of them, I would say especially caregiving, we draw ELA students from typically our highest level of ELA. And that's just because there is so much content. It's such an intensive course. The reading skills need to be very high. And so we want to make sure that the students that come into the program are going to be able to have the ability to keep up with that, even with the additional supports. For the coding class, the computer science early IBEST, I think many of you that are listening in on this have probably had experience working with teaching technology skills to people at all levels and with different varying language skills. And I think this one's really, really accessible for multiple levels. I would almost say all levels of students in our program. For the English language learners, I think we see many students coming in from an intermediate level of English language that can still manage to succeed in that class.
Thanks, Wendy. I'm going to take one that's about, there are a few that are sort of about, you know, what certifications do your early IBEST programs lead to? And if it doesn't, and if it doesn't have a certification, does it count as an IET? And that's really something where our program is really focused on the ideal of IETs, which is about getting students onto a career pathway and into the workforce sooner. And so we've really focused on, you'll hear us say a lot today, industry recognized training, even when there isn't an industry recognized credential that fits the pathway. We always vet that with our workforce partners, both within the college and in the one-stop system. Is this training, even without a credential, something that will help learners get on a pathway? And if the answer to that is yes, then we go for it. The question of does it count? The answer is not always, right? So the reality is, although we're doing some really great stuff that's really helping learners get on career pathways in our program, they may not all show up on all of the NRS tables as they're currently designed. And we've made that decision within our program that we're going to go for it anyway, and we keep striving. I mean, there's no question. We keep reaching for industry recognized credentials. So for example, while Python is a training and a resume builder for our learners right now, we are aspiring to get them further and to a Python certification. We may not have done that in the first round or two, but we're headed that way because it's right for students too, not just because it will get them on an NRS table. And then I know I want to get back to the rest of the presentation, and we'll do some Q&A at the end, but Wendy, can you say one more time, sort of roughly, how many hours of a week are folks in these programs, and what's required, and what times a day are we running them?
Yeah, that's where there's a really big difference among all of our programs, and you'll see that in the next two as well. The Caregiving Early IBEST is really intensive. So we typically see the students doing the first 4 weeks of adult education contextualized instruction for it's anywhere between 3 to 5 hours a day from Monday through Thursday for 4 weeks, which is much more intensive than our regular classes. The Caregiver Training Institute piece, where they get the technical training, that's actually 2.5 weeks of full day. So what makes that one different is the students are really committing. They're stepping out of their classes, their normal classes, to enter into the caregiver training program. And they are really on an employment track. They are getting that credential, and that is one example in healthcare professions. You know, the credentials do have that kind of weight, and they need that. So they're really aiming for employment at the end of that program. When it comes to TEALS in our computer science program, we're working with our partners. Their normal requirement is about an hour a day. So we've got an hour of computer science instruction 5 mornings a week that we build in right before their 9 o'clock class start time. So 8 to 9 Monday through Friday. And then we have an additional 2 hours that we extend on Fridays. And that gives a chance for students to do some career exploration, some project work, and to go and visit some different employers or different technology providers and organizations and get some more exposure to it. So they're really, really different. The other thing about TEALS is that it is longer. So it's less intensive, but it does last a full semester. And so that kind of covers 2 of our typical adult education sessions. So again, I mean, if we design things, they might perfectly fit within our regular schedule and our regular program. But this is the sort of meeting in the middle kind of approach. When we're working with external partners, we have to negotiate a lot to figure out how can we meet all of our partners' goals and expectations, and yet still provide the students with the training they need in a way that they can access it.
Great. Wendy, thank you so much. There are lots more questions. We're going to have a little more time for Q&A at the end, but we want to jump back in and share 2 other models. So Wendy, take it away.
Sure. Okay, so those first 2 early IBEST programs I was talking about, they both utilized external training partners, and were both opportunities that came to us from partners we had already been working with. The innovation was focused on designing a program that worked within others' parameters. The next 2 early IBESTs were developed from within our own program. So both are built into our adult education calendar, and they run at the same time as our regular sessions. The early IBEST for entrepreneurship evolved from an earlier contextualized business class we ran for English language learners. We learned through those prior experiences that students were more interested in learning about how to start their own businesses. And in fact, many of our students, we learned, already had their own small businesses and were hungry for a class where they could learn more about entrepreneurship and improve their English skills at the same time. So one of our Ella instructors also just happened to be a business owner and had taught entrepreneurship outside of our program and regularly mentored individuals to become successful entrepreneurs. So we recognize this resource, and she took on the development of the entrepreneurship curriculum. The design of this class follows our traditional adult ed schedule. It's offered 2 days a week, 3 hours per class. It's designed to fit the 2 highest levels of our Ella program. This is the only early IBEST program specifically built just for Ella students. So this class integrates real-world resources and connects students to programs and people that can support the development of their own entrepreneurship. Guest speakers are brought in that are relevant to real-world business ownership. We bring in entrepreneurs, so we bring in people that work with different departments in the city that students would need to engage with. Students are connected with community resources such as the City of Tucson Licensing Department and SCORE, which offers extensive networks of volunteer mentors. The course has a particular emphasis on communication and technology skills, with students learning to navigate multiple technology tools, platforms, and resources to increase their technology competency. By the end of the course, students have completed an essential technology skills portfolio and are able to both recognize and utilize their technology skills, essential to success as an entrepreneur and also transferable to any career pathway they may pursue. So throughout the course, students develop their unique idea and create a feasibility study to support the viability of that idea. On the final day of class, students formally present their feasibility studies to the class and to multiple visitors. I want to point out that entrepreneurship is a good example of a pathway that does not require an industry recognized credential typically. So for this early IBEST, we wanted to integrate the kind of training and connections to networks and resources such as SCORE, the City of Tucson, or the Small Business Development Center that are essential to individuals starting a business in Arizona. So students also explore our college courses that might further advance student skills with business, technology, or other training aligned to their business interest. And through the tech skills portfolio and feasibility study, we're able to generate tangible outputs to this training for the students to match with their collection of resources. So in that way, students really feel that they are prepared to move forward on a career path as an entrepreneur. The fourth early IBEST to highlight is our early IBEST for Building and Construction Technology, or BCT. That's kind of a mouthful, so I'm going to shrink it to BCT. Like the early IBEST for Entrepreneurship, this early IBEST was designed to align to our AE program schedule. It's offered 2 days a week, again, like the other class, and 3 hours per class. It's a very good fit for mid-level ABE and for a higher level LS students. The early IBEST for Building and Construction Technology is designed to establish an early on-ramp to the applied tech pathway. And when we started this program, we already knew that our college had a very strong applied technology division. We had partnered with machine tool technology and automated industrial technology programs for IBEST. We knew that the BCT program had strong faculty leadership and a diversity of directions in which a student could specialize, like plumbing, electrical, construction, solar. We also knew that many of our students already worked in the sector and had experience that they could bring to this pathway. Our one-stop partners confirmed there was a healthy regional employment demand in BCT, and that wasn't looking to slow down. So if you roll all of these components together, it really pointed to BCT as a healthy option for an early IBEST. The instructor from Adult Ed who developed this early IBEST had no background in BCT, but is a really great collaborator, and she worked very closely with BCT faculty partners to understand what content in this broad field would be best to focus on when developing the course and contextualizing the curriculum for a 9-week class. The focus landed on BCT's safety and communication skills and alignment to the industry recognized NCCER modules, or National Center for Construction Education and Research modules in those areas. This would familiarize and prepare students for the first of many micro modules available to students in the BCT certificate program or associate's degree program in our college. So students learn about a variety of career pathways inside of this program, and they learn about those in the broader applied tech divisions, such as machining, automotive, welding, CAD, automated industrial tech, and others. So students can get more familiar with those pathways in case they want to pivot and maybe go in a different direction. They also connect with one-stop services, and they learn how they can support them on a pathway to training and employment in the sector. So the training component is found in the content that drives the course. Our instructor has used the same text that our college's BCT programs use in their courses to guide her contextualization and align the curriculum to the NCCER credential. So students become prepared to enter our college's BCT program or to sit for the NCCER module on safety and communications. In the first cohort, several students also completed OSHA 10 at a regional conference. And you know, OSHA 10 and NCCER are both industry recognized credentials. So moving forward with this particular model though, we are continuing to seek ways to integrate OSHA 10 training and the NCCER module exam directly into the class. This will require our partners to work with us in developing some creative solutions to some of the barriers that exist to making that happen. So just to recap, early IBESTs are designed to get students started on a career pathway sooner, and they all do it in unique ways. Whether through industry recognized credentials or industry recognized training, all programs connect students to training that is industry recognized and contextualized to contextualize basic skills instruction. All are accessible to students at lower skill levels and help students map their next steps onto a career pathway. These may not require the kind of robust commitment that IBEST requires, yet they utilize the kind of collaboration and innovation that has made IBEST such a success.
Thank you, Wendy, for laying out our various early IBEST models. We didn't set out to design 4 early IBEST programs with unique and diverse models, but that's what happened as we worked with our partners to design the programming that fit the context of each career pathway. In an effort to begin to evaluate program success, we looked to one of the primary outcomes that our WIOA funders look to, measurable skills gains, or MSGs. And we found that 72% of our students who participated in early IBEST achieved an MSG. That was compared to about 50% and 52% in our overall program. And then we also saw that the average hours per student was much higher, with early IBEST participants averaging about 242 hours, compared to ABE learners who were really just around 70 average hours per student, and LF are averaging about 88 hours per student. So this data shows us that the early IBEST students are getting significantly more time on task and are seeing higher rates of educational gain. So even though we are still strengthening these models, we are seeing lots of early successes. So as we begin to wrap up, we want to summarize and reinforce some of the key takeaways or lessons that we've learned in implementing early IBEST programming. First, look for training that leads to a pathway that will be open to students without a high school diploma. Caregiving, construction, coding, and entrepreneurship all provide career entry points that can be accessed without a high school diploma. This is super important. The early IBEST programs are short, and we do not expect to see students completing the course and passing the GED exam in just 9 to 20 weeks. So most will need to continue to study with us in our ABE and ELA classes or in one of our other IBEST programs. However, if they choose to pursue careers in these areas while continuing in our program, there will be opportunities even without the diploma. So for example, one of our ABE students in the early IBEST for Caregiving program, over the course of the program, identified the local employer that she wanted to work for. Upon completion, she interviewed with and got hired with that employer using the employability portfolio that she had developed during the early IBEST program. Now she's still studying toward her GED while also working in the field. Secondly, don't be afraid to think outside of the box. Be flexible, be ready to pivot. All IETs are really efforts in innovation. All of you who are building them know that you must approach each of them differently and with flexibility. One great example of the benefits of thinking outside the box was when we learned that the face-to-face model in our early IBEST for computer science was not working as well as we had hoped. So as Wendy shared, with our second cohort, we shifted completely into a new instructional model utilizing remote instruction and saw fantastic results. Not long ago, we invited our chancellor to come see what we were doing in our early IBEST for computer science classroom. And he witnessed our students, a mix of both ABE and ELLA students, all working with the remote instructor from Seattle. As it turns out, 2 of the students were homesick that day, but had still logged in. Each student took a turn engaging the chancellor in their projects that they had created using Python. He even put on a headset and played the games designed by the students who were at home sick and studying remotely. The hybrid model of in-class and remote instruction, the highly functioning lab and equipment, and the ease with which students were able to navigate this virtual world impressed him so much that he blogged about it that day and has been talking about it as a model of innovation ever since. And I have to say, now that all of our instruction has moved into a virtual space for the time being during this COVID-19 pandemic, we're leaning on what we've learned from this early IBEST to inform how we deliver remote instruction in all of our classes. Third, collaboration is essential. Following the model we developed in our early IBEST programs, we utilized what we call operations teams for our early IBEST programs as well. Our operations teams consist of representation from all of our partners, one-stop staff, external training partners, HBOG team members, CTE faculty and leadership, and of course, adult ed. We meet at least monthly, leading up to, during, and after each program to collaborate on everything from designing the schedule and instructional model, organizing intake processes and establishing eligibility criteria, to planning the job fairs and graduations at the end. During the program, while it's running, the team tracks student progress and makes needed adjustments along the way. Ongoing operations team meetings build strong relationships and help us move from a mere partnership to true collaboration. And it's this ongoing collaboration that's really essential to the success of a program. We've worked with our strong collaborative partners to adjust, expand, and identify new IBEST and early IBEST programs. As we noted, 2 of the early IBEST programs came as the result of those partnerships and those relationships. The TEALs coming to us from One Stop and the Caregiving coming to us through our partners in HPOG. That's why we recommend that all adult ed programs reach for new partners through the partners you already have. Tap your networks as much as possible. And fourth, embrace industry recognized training when an industry recognized credential either doesn't exist or is not available. Careers in healthcare are understandably driven by industry recognized credentials. Careers in other sectors may allow varying degrees of access without them. Our early IBEST for caregiving students will find many more opportunities in caregiving if they have that CGTI certificate and the Arizona State certification under their belts. But the need for industry recognized credentials in other sectors really depends on the type of work and the employer. So seeking out industry recognized training that's valued by both the students and which leads to skills that are valued by employers, that's important too, even when no credentials are available. Our entrepreneurship course supports learners in development of a feasibility study and a business plan that will guide the work of their own business. There is no industry recognized credential or test for that. They simply need a well-developed plan. The Python coding language that students learn in TEALS and in the TEALS early IBEST is an industry recognized coding language. This early IBEST may not lead to an industry recognized credential, but students are able to put Python on their resumes, and that leads to increased employability. At the early IBEST level, we have been flexible about those industry recognized credentials, but never flexible about industry recognized training. It must have the training. So finally, as we wrap up, and as you reflect on this webinar and the work that you're already doing or aiming to do with IETs, we encourage you to reflect on questions such as these, which are the questions that have guided us really. We encourage you to challenge yourselves and your teams to think outside of the box, be flexible to meet your context, and think with your workforce system and other partners to work together toward developing IETs that meet local, employment and student needs. So with that, we're going to pause again, and we have just a few minutes left to take a couple of questions, and we've been kind of monitoring the chat as we go. I'm going to ask Wendy to join me. I highlighted a couple, Wendy, that I want to answer, and then maybe there's a couple more that you saw. I'm going to start my video because I think it helps to not have a disembodied voice. Hi, everybody.
Lori, while you're doing that, do you mind if I launch the poll just so we have everybody has a chance to take the survey?
That would be great. Thank you.
Great. So while she's getting together the questions, I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll and ask that everybody take just a minute or two to let us know how you felt the webinar went.
Thanks. So, so one important question was, do grants cover all of the costs for students, or is there a cost that students have to take on themselves? And we are really careful to work closely with our partners to make sure that all aspects of our IBESTs and early IBESTs are free to students. So we do graded funding, right? We co-enroll our learners, and we owe a Title I to help pay for training costs and fees and equipment. We work with our college partners to help get students enrolled and into financial aid if it's financial aid eligible, which all of our IBEST level programming is. And then because this is essential to the work that we do in adult ed funds the adult educator, and that part is all covered by the grant. So think about braided funding and ask that question, that very question, like, how can we make this free to students? Ask that of your partners as you meet with them. Wendy, do you want to answer that one you've highlighted about recruitment? I'm wondering if I have Wendy.
She's muted.
Oh, Wendy, you're muted.
I know. Okay.
Okay, there you are.
It's so funny. It's so hard to click that little microphone sometimes. Yeah, recruitment. These early IBESTs are housed inside of our adult education learning centers, and for the most part, we recruit inside of our fairly large adult education program. We use college and career navigators and teachers to recruit from their classrooms. So we make sure we visit the students and let them know about these opportunities and these pathways. We also recruit through our partners. So our partners do their part in it as well. When we launched Caregiving, the early IBEST for Caregiving, CGTI, the technical trainer, One Stop, and HPOG, they all were recruiting into these programs as well. When we are looking at, for example, the TEALS computer science, we've had a really not too difficult time to find full classes coming out of our own program. But again, our one-stop partners are always aware of what's coming, and they will steer students or clients that they have towards these early IBEST programs. So it's a fairly grassroots effort. I will just add briefly that when we recruit for IBEST, it's a much larger and broader recruitment because we're really talking about college certificate training programs. And so those are much more robust recruitment efforts.
Ladies, I really appreciate you taking all of this time and sharing your knowledge and expertise with the field here. And I think what we probably should do, because there's still so many more, 61 more questions, we're going to actually circle back, and I'm going to share the questions with these two lovely presenters, and they're going to then help us to put together some basic responses. So for all of you there, on the webinar, we will definitely get back to your questions. We just want to be mindful because we could be here for 2 more hours. So before I go any further, I want to give Robert Brightbread one more opportunity to talk with our guests here, talk with our participants.
Well, thank you to everybody. Sharon, I only have one complaint. Participants and hosts, panelists aren't allowed to take the poll. So I thought that was fantastic. And to everybody who participated today, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. And once again, just know that so much of what you heard today can be accomplished in Burlington English, and getting, your learners at even, beginning levels of ESL, making smart career pathway planning so that when they enter into these type of early and IBEST, IET, IELC type programs, that everything that your teachers need to get them ready and to succeed, we've got in Burlington English. So with that, hope to see you at burlingtonenglish.com. And with that, thanks again, Wendy and Lori, and back to Sharon. Appreciate you all.
Great. Thank you so much, Robert. And Wendy and Lori, just fantastic job. Thank you again for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us here in the field. And thank you to all of the participants who took their time today as well. We truly appreciate it. And we hope to see you on tomorrow's webinar.
Thank
Bye.
you, Sharon.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. Be safe. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.